I am absolutely thrilled to feature Caleb Gardner, who is the co-founder and managing partner at 18 Coffees. He'll be our moderator, along with our incredible speakers, Jessica Leffring, founder of the Polite Society, Lindell Palmer Clark, founder and CEO of Daily Greatness. And I have my Daily Greatness planner right here next to me at all times. And what if Yahya, founder of Horizons. So we're going to have some time for audience questions at the end of our program, and I'm going to definitely encourage you to send them via the chat icon, which is located at the bottom of your screen. So please, let's make this interactive. And thank you again, all of you, for joining us today. I think we have maybe 170 some people that have signed up for our event today, which is really exciting. Special thanks to all of our speakers for taking time out of your day to share your insights with us. And we're going to kick things off with a presentation by Lindell before Caleb leads us in a moderated discussion. So Lindell, over to you.
Hi, everybody. Thanks very much, Kimberly. It's great to be with you from the East Coast of Australia, bright and early this morning. So Daily Greatness, for the past 10 years, Daily Greatness has been creating mindset, productivity, and performance tools to really help both individuals and teams. And we had a really interesting shift about 2 years ago, where we saw an increase in demand in the B2B space, with companies coming to us for mindset, productivity, and performance tools for their teams. And so we decided to research and develop a fit for market tool for the workplace, which I'm, as Kimberly just showed that she has hers, and this is our Success at Work Planner. And this was before COVID hit. And so last year, once COVID hit, we saw an increase in demand as well for companies looking for tools to really engage their teams in a workplace environment. So to really understand the effectiveness of a tool such as Success at Work, we decided to launch a pilot program in January with 140 participants across a range of industries and companies such as a bank, an insurance company, a charity, a marketing agency, a SaaS company. And we launched this pilot program really across a range of companies that were already working in a hybrid working model to test the effectiveness of this tool. And so today I really wanted to share with you some high-level results of that pilot program that may really serve as a launching off point around some insights that we found that may be helpful as your organizations transition to this hybrid working model. So as we found through our pilot program, the problem that really exists is the isolation, disconnection, and disengagement across teams, which of course leads to a loss of productivity due to disruption and distraction. And of course then the issue of presenteeism, costing companies up to 10 times more than absenteeism, as reported by Gallup's State of the Workplace report. For those of you who are not familiar with the term of presenteeism, it's simply being present but disengaged at work, versus absenteeism, which is being away from work due to illness. So this problem, of course, creates the challenge and many opportunities for growth in organizations, and to really start to engage your people and asking, how can we help you do your best work in the new hybrid workplace model? But not just to measure productivity, performance, and engagement, to actually improve it. And the challenge is really not only is really logistical and psychological, as we'll find out today. in this discussion as this discussion unfolds. So as part of the pilot program, we conducted a pre-start survey to really understand where they were around a range of topics as they were working both either exclusively at home or between home and office. So here's what they told us. 95% of participants agreed that their mindset greatly affects their ability to be effective at work. 87% expressed feeling not aligned or not fully aligned with their purpose at work. And 56% reported feeling overwhelmed or stressed at work some or most of the time. So what this really highlights is that there is substantial opportunities for organizations to assist and support their people through this time of transition around mindset, around reconnecting into the organization's goals and purpose, and also to provide tools and strategies around supporting their people around stress, anxiety, overwhelm. So we don't have time today to obviously share all of the case study findings, but here's some high-level findings that may be helpful. We saw a strong correlation between the engagement of the HR or supervising manager and the results of their participants, which confirmed that change programs are only successful if they're supported from the top. There were the top 20% of star performers in every organization who are flexible, who adapt easily to change, and who can model the change or transition for the rest of the organization. And implementation is key. It's not enough to create a strategy or to give standalone training. For true change and full adoption to occur, there needs to be ongoing support and to implement the change. And above all, the key word that came up time and time again throughout our pilot program was focus. Both organizations asking what is it we need to focus on to really move the needle and to create effective change at this time. And likewise, how do we help our people to focus more so they can continue to be productive in an environment that's essentially very distracted and disrupted? So we want to also put the power in your hands during this forum, and this is really your opportunity to vote for the question that you would like the panel to answer. So there's 6 questions here. You simply need to use the Zoom poll to vote for the one that you'd like the panel to answer during the forum. But these questions can also serve as an internal discussion for your organization. So feel free to screenshot this. They will be sent out after the forum as well. Number 1, how can we provide a foundation or framework to build resilience that our people can lean on in challenging times? Number 2, how do we give individuals that may struggle with structure the support they need to stay focused and deliver results? And how do we create a culture of always learning and improving for maximum productivity? Number 4, in a hybrid model, how do we keep everyone on the same page and aligned to a common purpose and vision? Number 5, how can we help our people do their best work at home while helping them feel less isolated and more connected? And finally, number 6, how can we do more than just measure workplace health, happiness, engagement, and performance, but actively promote, develop, and improve those outcomes? So we look forward to seeing the answers that you'd like, the question you'd like us to answer. And just before I finish up, if you're looking for a tool to engage your organization, for everybody attending the forum, we're giving away a complimentary copy of our Success at Work edition, as well as the full case study, by simply reaching out via the link in the chat at dailygreatnessatwork.com. And we'd love to send you a copy if you're interested.
And we have about 10 seconds. We have a couple more people, I think, that are voting here, but it looks like we're going to have a pretty clear winner. All right, I'm going to end the polling. Here we go. All right, so we win. Question number 4 that we're going to answer live with the panel. In a hybrid model, how do we keep everyone on the same page and aligned to a common purpose and vision? Caleb, I think over to you.
Awesome, thank you. I was just taking frantic notes to make sure I remembered to ask that question. Hey everyone, so good to have you all here. I'm really looking forward to this discussion. I do want to give our amazing panelists a chance to introduce themselves though. Lindell, we just heard from you. Do you want to start? Just give us a sense of who you are and tell us about a little bit more about Daily Greatness.
Sure. So essentially we started as a consumer-based business, and we create tools, physical planner tools around well-being, mindset, productivity. And we also run coaching programs, and really with a big focus on workplace. As we move into this transition, it's been a really big part of our pivot strategy, but also the demand on products for mindset, productivity, well-being is has really increased through this time. So essentially we're a coaching, education, training company.
Thank you. Jessica?
Hi, I'm Jessica Leffring. I'm the founder of the Polite Society here in Chicago. The Polite Society is an etiquette training company, and our content focuses on improving communication, personal branding, and professionalism in order to reduce day-to-day incivilities, both at the workplace and at home. So essentially helping people strengthen both their personal and professional relationships and to be comfortable in uncomfortable situations.
Thank you. I'm very much looking forward to hearing your perspective on wearing pajamas while on a Zoom call, but we will circle back on that. Watif, how about you?
Hello, everyone. So my name is Awatif. I'm the founder of Our Horizons LLC here in Chicago as well. We are advocating for leadership skills. And if you go Google leadership right now, you'll find 2.6 billion definitions of it and over 70,000 books written on the matter. But we define it under 3 main pillars: people leadership, business leadership, and strategic leadership. Each pillar consists of certain themes and certain skill sets required to become a holistic leader. So Jessica and I kind of play in the same arena. We're also looking at civility, looking at culture elements. And so that's what we do.
Awesome, thank you. I want to start by just giving you all a chance to give us some advice. So by far, when we look at pre-survey results and just anecdotally, when I've been having conversations with business leaders the last few months, we've been talking about hybrid work becoming the new reality and kind of looking at a lot of decisions that companies are making about the spectrum that we have of going completely back to the office or staying fully remote, and hearing about the philosophical debates that are raging at some of these companies right now. Just fascinating stuff. But assuming that hybrid work is going to become the new reality, right? Whenever the new reality happens to happen, we were talking about, how we're starting to open back up. But let's say we've gotten there, we're a few months in the future, we're doing hybrid work. How do we do it well? I would love for you just all start with that. Just give us a piece of advice. What do you see in terms of doing hybrid work well? Watif, I'll throw it back to you since we heard you last.
All right, thank you. Well, I think this is going to be a great opportunity for those in HR or similar roles to start partnering with the IT department to make sure that all the systems, tools, processes are available to everyone, those who are working from home and those who are working in the office. So there has to be a level playing field, and everyone should be able to perform and deliver using the company tools, whether they choose to work from home or in the office. Without obviously compromising on data security and all that kind of stuff. So I think this is a good opportunity for us to start building that environment where the two can coexist. And wherever you're working, you should be able to perform, and you should have access to all the tools that you need to do your work, whether you're doing that remotely or within the office. It's also a good time to revise any policies, procedures, what have you, to make sure that there is alignment and you give the flexibility and multiple options for those who are working remotely, as well as those who are working at the office as well. So that's the two things I think we can, practically start with right now, in terms of the IT systems, supporting systems, and the policies to enable these two environments to coexist.
So HR and IT need to work a lot more closely together.
Absolutely. This is the time for them to partner.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Just going on who I can see on Zoom, Lindell, how about you?
Yeah, I think this is a great opportunity to get back to basics and for organizations to really revisit their mission, their vision, their values, and to relaunch those in some ways to get full alignment across the organization so that people feel connected, supported through this transition. This is a big transition. So it really is going back to basics, and it can create a really great opportunity for companies to move forward even stronger when they really align and get back and create that strong foundation to move forward with.
Great. Jessica?
I agree with Lindell on that. I think that maintaining that sense of purpose and what everyone's there for is really important. And I look at this as more of kind of like a people perspective, that, this was really a hard transition, and working from home gave people freedom, and freedom's really empowering. And it's hard to go back to completely switch gears and go back to the office if you feel like you are losing some of that freedom. So I think it's really important to have transparent communication, to discuss with everybody why you were doing what you were doing, and to think about everybody that you work with and how you treat them as well, and communicate with them as kindly as you communicate and treat your clients. I think that's really important.
I love that. And it actually leads into what I wanted to ask you about next. So perfect segue. I mean, one of the hardest things as business leaders over the last year has been making long-term plans and making sure we're communicating those plans and keeping everyone up to speed about why we're making the kinds of decisions that we are. And so looking between now, let's say in the summer of next year, we're going to go through a different flavor of that, right? Because we're adjusting back to some version of normal. How do you, what advice would you give to people trying to plan for, keeping employees aligned while we're in that transition, which is something everyone wanted to hear about? Just anyone who's ready to answer.
Oh, I think communication again, and trying to communicate with people, even on the individual level if possible, just to make people feel important so that they are being heard, that management, that everybody on the team is part of the team. I think that's going to help everyone realign under that universal purpose, because during the pandemic we had that feeling and we were all working together for that purpose, but it was just differently, and it was kind of in more of crisis mode. And now we're trying to go back to thrive mode, and in that we need to communicate a little bit better and just make sure that we're all seeing things from the same perspective.
Totally. I love the idea of distributed leadership. Like, it has to come both from the top, but also from individual one-on-one meetings with managers, right? Lindell, Watson, anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I think people need to know that this is going to be an experimental phase until we get this right? So, and to add on to Jessica's point, there's no such thing as over communication during this phase. So communicate, and communicate. And as you do that, you will get to know the preference in terms of channels and frequency of communication and what have you. But going back earlier to the plans and goals and what have you, we obviously have to have long-term plans, and we have to have goals, and I think everyone here might have heard of SMART goals. So those need to continue. And there is an effort right now, even before COVID and before the madness of 2020, to actually do those regular check-ins and regular communication to make sure that people are aligned and that we're all working towards the same goal. And if we're not, if things change, like I said, this is going to be an experimental phase, then be agile enough and be flexible enough to open up and look at new opportunities as well. So that's what I had to say there.
Great. Lindell, any thoughts? Otherwise, I have a follow-up for you as well.
Yeah, I think just really a lot of what we're talking about here was always important, but this, the shift and COVID has just pushed everything to really prioritize these around purpose, around, really clear communication. Really everything we've said here is not new. It's just that it's now more important than ever. And it's pushed it up to the top of the priorities. So it's really an exciting opportunity, and if we can embrace it.
I love that. I mean, we've been telling our clients for months that remote work, but also with hybrid work, just means doing what you were doing with a lot more intentionality, right? Like the best practices don't necessarily change, but it means we have to be a lot more intentional about creating things like serendipitous opportunities to learn from each other, right? Along those lines of our clients, someone pointed out to me, I never introduced myself. Hi, Caleb. I run a company called 18 Coffees. We work in the innovation and change management space, especially at the intersection of digital disruption, social consciousness, and the future of work. So the last year has been our bread and butter in terms of things we care about. So love having this discussion, which is why I was so eager to get to it. Lindell, just a follow-up for you. I think there's going to be a lot of anxiety for those who either choose to or have the option to continue to work remotely, right? Like those of us who either want to, not have that commute, or for whatever reasons why we, maybe a safety concern, whatever it is, remote employees have always had a visibility issue historically, right? So what advice would you give to employees that choose to either be fully remote or some hybrid combination of it to make sure that they're on the right career path, that they're staying visible, all the things that they're going to be concerned about?
Yeah, I think it comes down to creating a structure for the team with regular check-ins. There obviously needs to be, some organizations are really great at this, and others are going to have to really adopt a new way of checking in, Monday morning calls, Friday, week wrap-up calls, daily check-ins, whatever's required, and to be proactive about that. And so I think there's really no excuse in with the technology that we have. We can absolutely achieve all of that. So it's really about, and I think it brings up trust. There's obviously trust issues around, that may arise around, is everybody doing what they say they're doing? And then there's obviously micromanaging from the other side, managers checking in too much. So I think there's going to be that sort of leveling of, and really understanding where everybody is, but there's really no way around it. It's just open communication, having a really great schedule and scheduling on the calendar, regular check-ins so that people stay visible and connected.
Right. As a manager, it's totally hard to maintain visibility into your employees without micromanaging or feeling like you're kind of creeping on their day, right? Like anyone, flipping this around a little bit, and I'll open this up to anyone, what advice would you give managers who are trying to, make sure their employees feel seen without over managing them?
I love this question because so far, and in all these discussions, we're always putting the pressure on the organization or the manager to communicate or what have you. But I like this question because it flips it a little bit. It is your responsibility as a contributing member of your organization to also communicate up. So it's not only the managers that have to make sure that there is regular check-ins and all this stuff. You have the responsibility because you're the owner of your career, right? At the end of the day. So it kind of opens up that bottom-up communication. So you can take the load off your manager a little bit by saying, hey, let me schedule this time. I want to just, do a quick check-in, just this new project that I heard about, or there's something going on. I just want to make sure I get an understanding. It kind of gives the ownership of your career path back to the employees, because they should be responsible of as well to check in and make sure that their careers are aligned and that they are not being left out as well. So it's a two-way communication, really.
Yeah, being a lot more intentional about managing up when you
Yes.
aren't as visible, for
Yeah.
sure.
Mm-hmm.
I also think that we need to remember that just because you're at home, because we all have been for the last year, we can still do the same things in ways. You may not swing by someone's office and ask them to grab a cup of coffee, but it can be on you too to reach out to your colleagues and stay in touch and take a little bit of time, to have some fun conversation and see how they're really doing and checking in with people. That's a two-way street. You still have to do that part of the work, which is, the social aspect of being in the office, even if you are completely remote. And I think that we're all going to have to make a little bit more effort to do that.
Yeah, speaking of cultural considerations within the workplace, Jessica, I know this is really your background, and we've definitely had a hybrid in terms of work-life mixing over the last year, right? So would you advise either managers or the people they're managing to help draw those boundaries for people if we continue to have working from home? If a lot of us are not commuting, we might have a little bit softer boundaries than the ones who actually are.
Right. I think it's important that the leadership kind of set these guidelines. It has to come from somewhere, but also to have a really open communication and to figure out what works for everyone too. I mean, these boundaries and guidelines don't have to be, like it's not just to protect everybody so that they can have their home life and their professional life, but sometimes it's as a courtesy. Like maybe we cut off meetings at 7 p.m. because I want you to have a chance to have dinner with your family. Maybe it's communicating in a way that's a little bit more empathetic, to show that it's not all business all the time, because everybody understands that what everyone's gone through the last year has been really hard. And so we're making adjustments and we're changing the best way that we possibly can. And sometimes, if there are reasons behind certain guidelines, like maybe you're supposed to wear a suit for client calls, sometimes explaining a little bit of the reasoning why that's a decision that's being made or a recommendation can help people feel a little bit more included and understanding and more apt to do it without complaining or being unhappy.
Makes total sense. I mean, we all kind of re-emphasized the need for explicit communication and how important that's going to be. I wonder if, going back to your thought about scheduling, have you seen any creative or innovative ways that companies are thinking about communicating, when people are going to be in the office and when they're not, or what schedules folks are going to have when they're in the office or when they're at home? I'll open that to Jessica or whoever has seen, anything creative out there.
I think that obviously their shared calendars are a great idea, and just checking in, but also if you're communicating, like we've been talking about a lot, really closely with your team and the people that you're working with on a day-to-day basis, I mean, eventually you'll learn kind of what the scenario is. Maybe someone's not available for meetings on a Thursday afternoon, but maybe they're in the office Monday and Tuesday, and you can kind of get used to that. But also, I think that it could be fun to have just an informal check-in, maybe on a Friday, and just, touch base and say, what's everyone's week look like next week? I think someone's going to be traveling, whatever, just to get on the same page, because we aren't all going to see each other like we used to.
Anything to add from anyone?
I think really it's about listening, you know, and from an organizational perspective, really listening in, and really understanding what's working, and what's not working. And I think, you know, noticing red flags, where there might be things that are not being communicated. So I think, you know, it really is, in this transition phase, really staying open and agile and being willing to make adjustments, and not being too set on, you know, landing on a specific outcome or a specific way of working until things really start to settle, and it appears that it's actually working for your organization, because it's going to look different across all organizations and different for every individual.
Yeah, makes sense. Okay, I want to throw a wrench at all of you when it comes to this, you know, alignment issue, communicating schedules. When are we going to be in the office? When are we not? I actually feel pretty comfortable with the idea of teams doing that with each other. You know, like most teams have some kind of check-in every week. They share each other's calendars. There's much more visibility usually with the people you're most immediately working with. Talk to me about cross-team communication, because what I've heard a lot is that companies are starting to downsize the actual space they're even using, so that there are fewer desks, fewer conference rooms, and there, in theory, would be have to be a lot more communication between teams about who's using what space when. So, advice for best practices there, anything that you've seen where, again, you've seen companies already being thoughtful about that? Open to anyone.
I haven't.
Okay,
Go ahead, Jessica.
No, I was just saying, I would think that that's going to have to be coordinated by probably whoever's leading those teams to, you know, see if you're sharing office space, maybe you have it, you know, Monday through Wednesday or Thursday, Friday. I think it's going to have to come from the leadership of the teams initially.
I tend to agree with Jessica. So it really depends on the team leads to initiate those cross-functional ones as well, to make sure that everyone is aligned. But on top of that, maybe, and I'm just thinking louder, maybe one thing that the leadership or maybe HR can do is to have a deliberate once a month or whatever group the entire office or the entire unit, business unit or whatever, to just get together so that we're not isolated, we're not working in silos. So, you know, if you're working in sales, you should know what finance is doing, you should know what marketing is doing, and you're not looking at sales only. So I think that becomes the responsibility of the leadership to open up. And it doesn't have to be very formal. It can be informal as well. You can integrate games into this, like guessing games, or, you know, two lies and a truth or something like that, just to get to know what the others are doing. And then you see your goals, you see what you're doing within the organization, and you see how that links to everyone else. And you have that total visibility within the entire organization of what's happening. And those kind of initiatives have to be intentional, because we're not in one physical location. So those are the ones that can be done at maybe an HRE level or a leadership level to make sure that the teams talk to one another.
So there's a leadership responsibility to understand cross-functional goals, understand strategic goals of other departments at the high level, on top of just the functional, like day-to-day, who's going to be where, sharing calendars, kind of the mechanics of doing the hybrid work itself.
Yeah, if you pick up any employee, that employee should be able to tell you. And if you ask them what the strategy, what does your company do, and what does your organization, that person, that employee should have a good visibility of what the different sections of the company or the different functions of the company are doing. So rather than just knowing about his or her department or his or her team, you should be able to speak at a high level, with regards to what your team, the other teams are doing, and the organization is doing as a whole. So everyone should, know what everyone else is doing and how it all ties in together.
Again, I think kind of on the human level of this, it's up to everybody to take the initiative to reach out to different people and different teams and grab a coffee, go have lunch, have a conversation, even if it's getting on a Zoom call for 20 minutes and just, chatting. If we're not having the opportunity where we're bumping into each other at the water cooler, maybe we can do it digitally and still have the same, build those relationships and know what's going on.
There could also be an opportunity to actually have, a dedicated team, obviously depending on resources, that actually manages it for the organization. So it could be that there's a whole new title that is, head of remote working, or head of, hybrid workforce. So there could be, depending again on resources, and maybe it's only one person, maybe it's a whole department, depending on the size of the organization, but there could be something around that actually manages it.
Yeah, that's really interesting, and would be interesting to see if that would be a transitional role or a permanent role, especially if you're maintaining a permanent hybrid workforce, right? One thing that has come up a lot in our conversations about hybrid work, and especially as we, we're forced to do remote work, a lot of us in the last year, is the generational divide between how we view remote work. Obviously there's technology differences of opinion, but there's also just the relief some of us had about not having to commute so we could be with our families versus the kind of social obligations. A lot of the people that I work with saw, their social networks being very workplace based, and they've started to miss their friends. So Awatif, I wanted to throw that to you and just ask about how you've seen kind of navigating that intergenerational divide in the workplace, and any advice that you would have for that as we're trying to bring diverse viewpoints even about the remote work itself.
Yeah, I think if, well, first of all, ask people. What I've seen some organizations do is they pick on 2 or 3 or maybe, 5, 10 people, and they go into these closed meetup rooms and they brainstorm ideas of what to do and how to do things without even asking the people who are involved. So if you don't know, ask the people what their preference is, and look at the preferences at the individual employee level as well as the team level, and figure out a way to navigate the two. Like I said, this is going to be, there's no one question that fits the answers for everyone. It's going to be experimental. Maybe you need to look into stacking or looking into rotating roles and responsibilities of all that kind of stuff. But asking employees what works with them, what works with their teams, and whatever you do, make sure that you offer diverse options for those people. And again, I go back to technology, and I go back to IT, and your communication people. Partner with all those resources to make sure that you're unified in terms of your communication, in terms of your policies.
Can I ask a sub bullet of that? That's very related, and I think is worth its own question. So we're talking about inclusivity when it comes to work preferences. A lot of the conversation we've had over the last year since the George Floyd protests last year have been about inclusivity in the workplace from a racial justice perspective. And I've heard a lot of concern about this hybrid work environment reinforcing some of the power dynamics in a workplace, again, without the visibility that we may have into some intentionally or unintentionally not inclusive practices. And I know that someone asked that in the chat as well. Just that's a major concern as we move to hybrid work, how to maintain an inclusive culture. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, I like to think that there are silver linings in everything, every challenge that comes out. So despite all what's happened in 2020, I think one thing that has come out of that discussion is at least awareness, because some people don't know the circumstances of their colleagues. Some people don't, for people who don't have any limitations in terms of internet availability or space availability to do work at home, they might not know what it's like for their colleagues, who cannot be, either working from home all the time because of all those other limitations, either space or internet or what have you. So I really encourage storytelling. I think through storytelling and shared experiences, it really helps close those gaps. It builds empathy because that's how people relate to one another. This is not rocket science. If you understand the challenges of your colleagues, then you are a step closer to having an empathy and you relate to their situation. So again, going back to a bit of storytelling, using this as an opportunity to raise awareness and just compare and stop and think about what you have and what you don't have. And the only way of knowing that is if you allow for people to share these challenges and you understand what's going on in your colleagues' work space and life as well. Don't know if I've answered that correctly, but it's just trying to put yourself in somebody else's shoes. And you might not be able to do that if you don't know the challenges that they face.
Yeah, right, exactly. So it takes some intentional empathy on the rest of our parts to make sure our colleagues are included. And I mean, we could spend an entire session on that alone, I'm sure. I do want to transition to audience Q&A. So if you haven't had a chance, you do have a question that you want to ask, feel free to drop that in the chat, and we're going to get to that shortly. But I feel like the last thing we have to end on is acknowledging the elephant in the room is that as the offices start opening again, we're going to have colleagues that feel less safe about being in the office than being at home. And so I want to start maybe, Jessica, with you, since we're talking about kind of work, it kind of falls into that workplace etiquette conversation about how we are intentional about questions about safety. But then I'd love for everyone to chime in just what advice you would give about kind of navigating that as we go back to work.
Well, I think that anything, if it's in a sensitive nature, I think that people should express it privately and directly with their manager, just for morale of the rest of the team. And also, this is a very individual situation. We don't know how everyone's going to break down the hybrid model for their company, but it may not look exactly the same for everyone. And so that's where I think that the importance of meeting one-on-one and really actively listening and getting a feel, so that, like What If was saying, where they're coming from, what's going on in their world, and maybe they have to do something a little bit differently. Maybe they don't feel comfortable. Maybe it's not going to work at this time for them to come in, or whatever the circumstances may be. And I think that if you do it on an individual level, then everyone's going to be focused more on the decisions they're making for themselves and the company, and not necessarily what everyone else is doing. Because if you include them and what's going on with them, they're going to feel like it's partially their decision, and they're not going to worry about what everyone else is doing.
Watif, Lindell, any final thoughts about navigating COVID safety at work? Or not? We've got plenty of audience questions we can go to for sure. One that I think is really interesting that Rachel and Brian have brought up is just functionally how we are going to go about managing a team that is both hybrid and in person. So I think people are having flashes of sitting around a conference room with a screen up that shows all your virtual folks, and making sure how we are, distributing attention and the power dynamics and the communication issues and all of that. So I'm going to open that up. Just how should we think about navigating that?
I actually think this whole thing of having virtual meetings like we're having right now with Zoom, I think this should continue, even if you're in the office. That way, there is not going to be a separation between those who are connecting remotely versus who's in the office. So everyone will have their little box, and everyone, obviously, whoever's moderating, whoever's managing or taking notes, they'll be responsible of turn taking in terms of who speaks and make sure that everyone has equal time. But I think this is good because whether you are in the office or whether you are working from home, you have your little box, you have your space, just like everyone else. So you don't feel left out. You don't feel that the people who are, in one room together have more focus or have more attention than those who are outside. It just creates that level playing field when everyone, is doing it this way, and we see each other in our own little boxes, rather than, having a group of people sitting around one big conference room and then some people on the screen and what have you. So I think this should continue at least for a while until we're all back in the office again, and we can then let go of these virtual meetings.
So in the event you have both employees remote and employees in person, the remote people we kind of default to continuing a more equitable, we're all dialing in via video
Yes.
SOP.
Yeah, so you can be in the office. You can be in your office, but rather than going to a conference, dial in from your office, and then everyone looks equal.
It's bold, and I like it. Lindell, thoughts from you, especially navigating multiple time zones, since you're joining us from a different time zone?
Yeah, I agree with Awatif that that's a great idea, like to continue the remote or the remote model and being online for meetings. And again, sort of going back to the previous suggestion around having a team or individual heading up, what is this remote model going to look like for our organization? This could be one of the guidelines, is that when we have in-person or remote teams, we actually all meet on our Zoom link anyway. So creating some guidelines around how we meet, and a whole new set of procedures and office procedures around what does it look like for us in this new hybrid model. And I'm sure if we sat down, there'd be probably pages and pages that you could come up with around a completely new way of working that hopefully this conversation has really brought to the forefront. And in terms of it across time zones, well, I just have to say you have to embrace the mornings, and also just being flexible. But it does obviously blur, particularly when you're working late or early. It blurs that. When am I working, when am I not working, because the day is obviously extended. So just having that self-discipline to make sure that you're not overextending yourself. I mean, this really plays into the health and well-being piece, which was a big part of the pilot program research that we did. Is that the work day can be extended due to having calls across different time zones. But that's not really different. It's just that now we're at home, we obviously have that blurred line of when do I stop work and when is it now my private time, and that's a big conversation in and of itself.
I would say that early morning calls blur a lot of things. And I'm saying this from experience as someone who's been doing some international work at very early hours of the morning recently. Jessica, what do you think?
Okay, well, I agree with both of them, but I also come from a different perspective and think it's really important to manage meetings well. And that goes before this remote work as well. Just being organized, sharing with people what the purpose is, having an agenda, having somebody to moderate and keep things in line so that you're not wasting people's time and that you're making the most of it. And I think that that's an effective strategy but whether or not you're all in one conference room or whether everyone's a Zoom box, because I think that's where we miss a lot of communication, and we waste a lot of people's time. And I think that people would appreciate, having a more organized structure for meetings so that you can have less of them if necessary. And then, when you leave, what your next steps are supposed to be and what the purpose and plan is moving forward.
Love that. Speaking of intentionality, actually, Heather asked a really great question about making the case, and I'm going to interpret here a little bit for you, Heather, about what you're asking. When the leadership really wants to be back in person, but a lot of the employees see a lot of value in continuing to do virtual work and see parts of it as being more efficient, and defaulting to being in person as actually inefficient. I think that's what you're asking, Heather. How do you make the case for continuing this hybrid model if there are people who would like to continue it?
Well, I think it's all about organization. And if you are running meetings, or if you're taking the time to be really productive and make the most of it, that's going to be a huge aspect of this, because you're not getting together just to have a bunch of bodies in the room. There's a purpose, and it's organized, and there's a reason that you're there. And there might be times where it is necessary for everyone to come in. We don't know what or when, but there's always something more going on. And I think communicating the why of what you're doing is happening, and also just being more organized so that you aren't being inefficient.
Love that. Any other thoughts, Del Waffet?
Yeah, I mean, you can dedicate specific days, like Jessica said, where you can be in the office, but also it's important to note here that hybrid work or working remotely is not for all professions and not for all industries. There are some industries that you cannot work from home. You need to be physically in the office. So we're talking here about a segment of the workforce, people who can afford, or people who can work remotely. There's others who cannot do that, and they have to be in the office. So there has to be, and that's why the word hybrid, it's got to be a bit of this and a bit of that. And it varies from organization to organization in terms of the frequency, in terms of how often, how big the meetings are. That's really it's going to vary. But going back to what Jessica's saying, if you demonstrate the reason behind doing certain things, then people would be more willing to comply, as long as they understand the benefit of it or the reasoning behind it. Most people are reasonable, so they will, as long as you explain the reason, there shouldn't be a problem for the two to coexist.
All right, final thing I'm going to ask before we turn it over and close up shop. I want to make sure we answered the question that everyone wanted to hear in the poll about alignment. So I want to give everyone kind of a final thoughts about how to create alignment, how to maintain alignment between employees, especially who are working remotely or in the office. Final thoughts on that.
So I think it's all about structure, and really, first of all, again, reiterating going back to the foundation. Where are we going? What's our purpose? What's our mission? What are our values? And how are we going to use this opportunity to really bring our organization together and move forward into what can be a really transformational time for our business. So creating that structure around frequent check-in calls, whether that's on a team level or on a one-on-one level, and then really having systems and structures and tools in place to support that, and then coming back to really listening. Is this working, or do we need to adapt or change what we're doing to better serve our people and the outcomes that we're trying to achieve?
I I think it's important to get realigned with the purpose of why you're there, and remember that people are really important and that everybody has a role to play. And no matter what your company is producing or selling or what clients you serve, like there's a reason that you're there. And I think having a little bit of empathy for everyone, because it's been tough and it's going to be a tough transition back, but having that, but remembering like why we're all there, trying to be a little bit kinder to each other and treating each other again as you would treat clients. You know, treat everybody within your organization and people that you interact with on a day-to-day basis. I think if you treat them that well, it's going to serve everyone well.
One last thing to add is just ask people. Don't be sitting in a room strategizing and putting all these action plans without asking the people who are involved. Let them be part of that solution. Let their voices be heard, and bring them in when you're doing these strategies and for moving forward. So just ask them. Do focus groups. Those kind of things would be really helpful, I think.
Love it. Great note to end on. Thank you, everyone. I want to turn it over to Julianne, who's going to close us out.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for attending today. I think it was a very, very interesting discussion. I want to thank our three speakers. And if you could help us thank our speakers and all of their ideas by dropping a line in the chat with noting what's the best takeaway you had for today, will certainly help us with feedback as well as for future planning. I've been, like you, thinking about a lot of these subjects along the way. And I think the two key things that I came away with after today's discussion is that it's all about connections, and connections means people, but also technology. Make the technology work for the people. And the second is about flexibility. There's no one size fits all. There's no simple answer. And what I think about is, if we're putting in rules about this re-entry and these kind of things, ask yourself why. Why do you have that rule? Or why do you not have that rule? I think that helps guide the discussions. So I know we're at the top of the hour. I just want to thank everyone again for attending. Thank to our speakers so very much. We appreciate all of your thoughts and effort and time and early hours that some of you have dedicated here. We'll just want to give you a quick heads up that look for new information coming up on the Executive Club's website for upcoming virtual programs. In particular, May 19th, the Innovation Forum's event discussing smart cities and data-informed progress for urban areas. Now there's a topic, data-informed progress. Okay, so you can always check that out at executivesclub.org. We hope you have a wonderful rest of the day. We hope you felt this was valuable. And thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you soon. Bye, everyone.